In today's video, we are going to be doing some comparisons between the DJI Mavic 3 and the DJI Mavic 2. Let's jump into it. As you guys can see here, I've got both of DJI's flagship drones. The Mavic 2 was the last version, and now we have the Mavic 3, which obviously just came out recently. Both of these drones offer amazing features. Even if you're still using the Mavic 2, it is still a very superior drone to other drones out there. But the Mavic 3 does offer a lot of incredible features that the Mavic 2 didn't. And the Mavic 2 is now discontinued, so you can only buy the Mavic 3. But I thought I would do a little side-by-side comparison because I know there's a lot of people that are on the fence about whether they should upgrade from their Mavic 2 to their Mavic 3. So this is basically just gonna break everything down for you guys in a simple way, and I'm just gonna go over some of the basic stuff here between these two drones. So on this side, I've got the DJI Mavic 3, and on this side, I've got the DJI Mavic 2. They're both folded up right now, and overall, they pretty much have the same type of form factor with this quadcopter folding up design. Right off the bat, one thing I noticed that's different is the propellers are a little different from each other. So with the Mavic 3, we have this longer design and skinnier, whereas with the Mavic 2, we have this shorter and fatter design. And the Mavic 3 is a lot quieter in flight, and also it can speed up pretty quickly compared to the Mavic 2, so that might have something to do with these new designed propellers. Another thing I noticed is on the top of the Mavic 3, we have this grill here, whereas with the Mavic 2, we don't. It's just flat on the top. The front, obviously, we've got some changes here. With the Mavic 3, the gimbal automatically locks, whereas with the Mavic 2, we still have that plastic gimbal cover. I really like that the Mavic 3's gimbal self-locks, but the Mavic 3 does have this new, as Billy Kyle called it, drone bra, which is pretty interesting. It slides over the front of the drone and it protects the gimbal. So you can put this on, and it's actually very easy to put on. So let's pop off the Mavic 2's plastic gimbal cover here. As you can see, the Mavic 2's gimbal is just, out there. There's no lock to it. So there we go. I've got the drones unfolded now. I'm gonna leave the propellers closed. So unfolded, we can see that the Mavic 3 is a little bit bigger unfolded than the Mavic 2. Another major difference is that the batteries are way different. So on the Mavic 2, we have a top loading battery that looks like this. We're all familiar with that. And with the Mavic 3, we have a back loading battery that looks like this. So when you stack the batteries next to each other, the Mavic 2's battery is definitely shorter and fatter, whereas the Mavic 3's battery is much taller and slimmer. I prefer the Mavic 3 battery over the Mavic 2 battery because it slides in from the back, whereas with the Mavic 2, it's top loading. So a big issue with the Mavic 2 is the batteries would bulge up, specifically this part of the battery, and it would make it so that the battery wouldn't lock fully into place into the drone. And this could also pose a major safety risk because if the battery bulges up, too much during flight, it could actually fly out of the top of the drone, which means the drone loses connection with your remote. It falls out of the sky along with the battery, which could be a recipe for disaster. So this backloading battery with the new design is much, much safer than these top loading previous batteries that DJI used for the Mavic 2. On the Mavic 3, we actually have two cameras that act as the top sensor. And on the Mavic 2, it looks to be just like a little radar sensor on top. I think that the Mavic 3's top obstacle avoidance is probably much better than the Mavic 2's because of that. Obviously, I haven't tested that out to be 100% sure about that. Two cameras has got to be better than this one radar sensor. Another thing is we have some grills here on top of the Mavic 3. We don't see that on the Mavic 2. It's just this flat design on the top, whereas the Mavic 3 is a little bit more character on the top now. Let's flip things over and look at the belly of these drones. So if we flip this over here, on the belly of the Mavic 3, we have the lights, the LED lights. On the Mavic 2, we also have that, except on the Mavic 2, it's pushed more toward the back center. And on the Mavic 3, it's more toward the front, toward the gimbal. We also have the two bottom sensors, which on the Mavic 3, they're a little bit closer than on the Mavic 2. And we also have the radar sensor on the bottom. So we've got, looks like on the Mavic 3, it's like split in half. So there must be two, or, you know, that's just the design they went with, but that is interesting. So as far as the bottom goes, it looks like we have the same stuff. It's just placed a little bit differently. The one difference on the bottom is that with the Mavic 2, we have the SD card slot on the bottom. On the Mavic 3, they've moved the SD card slot to the back of the drone. And we also have on the other side here, well, nothing on that side. Obviously, our gimbals have changed. On the Mavic 2, we have a, you know, just the one camera there. It's a wide angle camera, as you guys can see it there. And on the Mavic 3, we have the new dual lens system, which includes a zoom lens and a wide angle lens. So with the Mavic 2, they actually had the zoom model and they had the Pro model. Pro model is the one we have right here. The zoom model had like a circular lens to it. And so, you know, you either had to buy one or the other. Whereas with the Mavic 3, you can just buy the one unit and you've got the best of both worlds. They both shoot 20 megapixel photos. A major difference between these two guys is the Mavic 2 shoots 4K at 30 frames per second, whereas the Mavic 3 can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second, or 5.1K at 50 frames per second. Definitely a huge boost when it comes to video with the Mavic 3. So let's look at the photos and videos that come out of these two drones and compare them. What you're looking at right now is the DJI Mavic 2 Pro shooting at 4K 30 frames per second in D-Log, color corrected in Final Cut Pro. As you can see, the colors look beautiful. It really is still a fantastic drone. Now you're looking at D-Log on the Mavic 3, and this was shot at 5.1K at 50 frames per second. As you can see, it looks very, very good. Now you're looking at a side-by-side comparison. So on top, you're seeing the Mavic 2 Pro at sunset, 4K 30 frames per second, and on the bottom, the Mavic 3 at 5.1K. The colors and everything look very good, but I've got to give it to the Mavic 3 here. This new video camera is insane. The Mavic 3 also features the zoom camera, which the Mavic 2 Pro doesn't have, so you're seeing some clips here from that. The Mavic 3 also comes with Hasselblad ND filters, which is a very nice touch to have for your video recording. Now for a photo comparison. Right now you're looking at a photo from the DJI Mavic 2 Pro during the sunset. It looks very nice. The colors pop really well. And now a photo from the Mavic 3. Now at first, I didn't think there was much of a difference between these two cameras, seeing that they're both 20 megapixel Hasselblad cameras, but I've got to say the colors look a lot better and the image looks a lot sharper from the DJI Mavic 3. So you definitely do get an upgrade in the area of photography. Here you are seeing on the left the Mavic 3 and on the right the Mavic 2 Pro. Both of these photos were captured with auto exposure bracketing, 5 shots, and stacked and edited in Lightroom. I do plan on doing a more in-depth video specifically comparing the cameras on the DJI Mavic 2 Pro and the DJI Mavic 3. In this video, this is more of just a general overview of the drones themselves, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you're updated when I create new videos, but let's jump back into the comparison. If we flip it around here and look at the back, on the back of the drone, on the Mavic 2, it's just these two sensors. On the back of the Mavic 3, we have a lot more going on now. We have that back-loading battery that we discussed earlier. We also have the SD card slot and USB-C port, which is located under this flap right here. So that is where those things have moved. On the Mavic 2, the USB-C port was actually on the side of the drone right there. So things have moved around a little bit when it comes to the USB-C port. Overall, the propellers are pretty much the same when it comes to taking them off. You just push down and spin the motor. And that is the same for the Mavic 3 here. You just push down and spin the motor, and then your propellers will easily come off. These drones both have internal storage. The Mavic 2 has 16 gigabytes, I believe, of internal storage, so not much at all. And I think that's the same with the Mavic 3. I'm not gonna lie, I should know that, but I'm not 100% sure. I never use internal storage, I only use SD card storage, so, you know, something I'll use in an emergency, but nothing I'll use on a regular basis. If I had the Cine version, I would definitely be using that 1 terabyte internal drive. Now, let's talk remote. So, the Mavic 3's remote is this one right here, which I have very, very mixed feelings about. And then the Mavic 2 here used this remote. So here's what they looked like, or here's what they look like. The Mavic 2's remote is much superior to me because it has a built-in data screen, whereas the Mavic 3, they gave you the same remote that you get with a Mini 2 or an Air 2S, which is why I have such mixed feelings about it. If you're gonna be purchasing a drone, especially a drone that's considered more on the professional side like the Mavic 3, you know, the least they could have done was included a data screen. Another thing about these remotes is the phone on the Mavic 2 would go on the bottom here with this unfolding design. And on the Mavic 3, we have this top design where the phone goes on the top. Now, actually, I do prefer that because when the phone was on the bottom here, it wouldn't always fit, and it was awkwardly in between like these two pieces on the Mavic 2's remote. So it's actually nice to be able to put the phone on top, kind of like the old days with the Mavic, or I'm sorry, with the Phantoms. I do gotta say, even with that though, I would have preferred this design with a data screen than this design with no data screen. So now let's talk about the bags, because the bags are a little bit different here. So with the Mavic 2, you got this bag, which mine is pretty beat up at this point. It's been to a lot of places. I've had this for like 2.5 years now. Yeah, it's a much smaller bag. It basically fit a couple of batteries, your remote, and the drone. Whereas the new Mavic 3 has this much welcome and improved bag, which is much bigger, which I like. But this is like double the size, and you can fit a lot more in here. You can fit the drone, you could fit 3 extra batteries, you could fit the remote, and you could even fit a DJI Mini 2 if you wanted to, and possibly another remote in here. Plus, this turns into a backpack, and when it does turn into a backpack, it has this entire extra space in it where you could fit even more things like other cameras. And so it's really awesome that this has so many uses to it, and I'm excited to bring this bag with me out when I go exploring with the drone. So things have definitely changed from the Mavic 2 to the Mavic 3. New remote, new design with different design features, a new bag. So there is definitely some differences here. Now, one thing I am not going to dive deep into in this video are the apps that these two drones use, but I will briefly discuss the differences between them. With the Mavic 3, you use the DJI Fly app, which is their newer app. It's also used for the DJI FPV drone, the DJI Mini 2, the DJI Air 2S, and so there's that. And then you also, with the Mavic 2, you have the DJI Go 4 app, which was used by the Phantom 4, the Phantom 4 Pro, the Mavic 2, I believe the Mavic Pro. So DJI has definitely made a change to the Fly app, which is missing a lot of features. There are things that you can't do in the Fly app that you could do in the Go 4 app, which is very frustrating. So just keep that in mind. In my other Mavic 3 videos, I go more deeply into this, but I think over time, the Fly app is going to get better because the issues with it are nothing that can't be fixed with a simple software update or a few software updates. So I do think that things will improve over time when it comes to the DJI Fly app. It's still new and it still needs work. But with at least the Mavic 2 here, you know, you still can fly the DJI Go 4 app like you've been doing, but there will come a point in a time where it will be hard to get replacement batteries, and it will be hard to get replacement propellers for this. And you'll really have no choice but to switch to a drone like the Air 2S or the Mavic 3, which use the Fly app. So someday you're gonna use it no matter what. DJI knows, you know, that they're trying to make this shift obviously to the Fly app. So it will get better over time. But yeah, this was just a comparison between these two amazing drones. The DJI Mavic 2 has been such an incredible drone. It has literally been one of my main tools in my media business for a long time. And I'm really excited to now be using the Mavic 3 and all of the new features that it's going to offer, the amazing video quality. Yeah, that was my comparison between the DJI Mavic 3 and the DJI Mavic 2. If you enjoyed today's video, definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my future videos. And also please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. That way it ranks higher in the algorithm. But until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video.